right, hello friends, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Dan, and this is Daily Art Adventure number 863. Woohoo! Can you believe it? I did my very first Daily Art Adventure on January 1st, 2017, so 3 years and 3 months ago now. I've done a lot of broadcasts since then. All right, I don't know if any of you have seen my project in the last 4 days. I'm doing 5 portraits essentially all at the same time. And I've talked quite a bit already, but just quick repeat for those of you who missed it. What do I call cheating? Now, cheating is in quotation marks. All cheating is legal. Many of the greatest artists through history used various photomechanical means to transfer the drawing, to capture the drawing on their canvas or their page or whatever, right? All cheating is legal, but, big but, the more you cheat, the more your head shrinks. The more you cheat, the more your brain shrinks. Analogically speaking, of course. The more you cheat, the more your skills at seeing deteriorate. And so you guys can cheat all you want. The thought of my skills deteriorating scares the ever-living daylights. I just want mixed metaphors. Scares the ever-living pants off me. What? That doesn't... Anyway, never mind. I don't like the idea of my skills deteriorating. Therefore, I try to minimize cheating. In fact, try to maximize doing it the old-fashioned. So I'm doing, one of the tricks that I'm employing right now is by starting 5 portraits all at the same time. I do eat, 20, 30, 40 minutes on each one, and then come back to the first one, and my eyes are fresh. So let me show you where I'm at. Forgive the bad grammar, or you English majors. Let me bring you up to date of these 5 portraits. First of all, the first one is a dog. So a little bit different subject matter. And I'm delighted to do a pet portrait. It'll look good on my resume. So there's Chewy, and there's his photograph. And I haven't worked on this one yet today, so I look at it and go, oh yeah, his muzzle, I need to shave a tiny bit off his muzzle. I got a dark spot right there that's in the wrong place. You see, I'm seeing it with fresh eyes because I haven't looked at it since Saturday. So that will be fun. I'll be coming back to that in a little while. I said to whoever was listening on Saturday, I said, I make no pretense. I'm not pretending to be a fantastic portrait painter. Okay, that's just to try to pretend to something you're not. It's just a dead-end street. So, one of the ways I sort of can put my portrait skill in numbers is that I think I'm at about 40% of my portraits I'm able to nail with a perfect likeness without any cheating. Okay, and this is so, and that seems to be proving true because at the moment, this is Kim, this is the portrait, this is her. I know Kim. This looks more like her even than this does, so I'm quite happy. But I can see a tiny, again, looking with fresh eyes, I say, oh, the top of her top lip, the red needs to go a little higher. See, it's these things that you see after letting it lay fallow for a while. You forget about the previous portrait because you're focusing like on this one. So I'm quite happy. I did all this without any cheating, quote unquote, just looking and copying. Okay, I have 2 portraits that I think fit that description, generally speaking, and out of the 5, 2 of the 5, which again is 40%. Whoops, I guess I'm actually quite happy with the dog, but that doesn't quite count. The stricture is not quite as strict. And this one, I'm very close to a perfect likeness. I haven't even started doing details on this one yet, like color of eyes and details around the eye, because it's more important to get things positioned right. So anyway, so those are the two that I'm happy with. I think this is Jefferson and JJ are two brothers. Those two I'm happy with. This one I'm almost happy with. So this is Jessica, and with this now we start getting into cheating territory. And I've already begun cheating. Here's what I did, and I'm going to work on this in a little while. I went to my computer right here behind me with Photoshop, and I worked and worked and worked till I got a print exactly the size of my painting. All right? And then I think you can see this. Here, let me bring you in real close just for a second. And then, hang on, let's get all straightened up. Welcome to you guys on Facebook, you newcomers on Facebook. Then in Photoshop, I put a bunch of vertical lines. They're not just random. Like the middle one here lines up with the space between her middle teeth. Here's one on this pupil, here's one on this pupil, one for the edge of her veil, one for the edge of her temple, and so on and so forth, the edge of her hair. So those are all those lines. Then over here, a bunch of horizontal lines, same thing. This one right here runs right through her left pupil, and then top of her lips, bottom of her lips, bottom of her teeth, top of her teeth, and so on and so forth. So they all line up. So when it's time to work on Jessica, this is a very simple device that I'm finding useful. I made it myself, just a piece of plexiglass, thick plexiglass, that helps a lot. And into which I have very carefully scratched very perfectly parallel lines, and the middle line on each side is red. So the fact that there's a vertical and horizontal, I've said this before, helps you achieve a perfect, what's the word I want to say, straightness. If there's both vertical and horizontal lines, it's easy for your brain to see a perfect vertical. But on this case, her head is tilted, so therefore these photographs are tilted anyway. And you can see I'm going to, and I did this real quickly the other day just to test and found out, okay, that's where her pupils are and so on and so forth. And I found out, let's do the bottom of her nose. Let's check out the bottom of her nose. Oh yeah, okay, so my bottom of her nose needs to come up about 1/16 of an inch, which on a portrait this size, it's considerable. All right, so that's one way of cheating. Let me back you guys up again. Two portraits actually in the dog, two people and one dog, I don't need to cheat on. Let me show you the one portrait of the 5 where I really found myself going off the rails. I was trying and trying and trying to copy this little guy, and I don't know if you know this feeling or not. That's sort of like, what's the word? That's an inside joke. If you've ever tried a portrait, you know this feeling exactly. I just was missing it. So I said, to heck with this. So there's my reference. Fix you just a little bit. And I'm going to have a monitor happening with you guys in just a little while. It's not quite happening yet. For some reason, there's a real lag time before my YouTube and Facebook start crunching in place, but I'll get you there in a minute, so bear with me while I'm over here trying to get my, there we go. Okay, I have my YouTube monitor is up and running. Hello, Mark Toomey. So anyway, this is me trying to copy, and I wasn't doing a good job. What you see here is I've already cheated. Let me show you how I cheated. Once again, using my computer, laptop, desktop computer, and Photoshop behind me. I printed off a copy of, I think his name is JJ, on the exact size of this. And then as you can, I think you can see here, I did a whole bunch of red lines. Again, not random. This one goes exactly through this pupil. This is the top of the eye, this is the bottom of the eye, this is the top of the nostril, bottom of the nose, top of the lip, bottom of the bottom lip, bottom of the chin, top of his shirt, and so on and so forth, right? And then with a T-square, first of all, I taped this up here very carefully, and then I just drew lines on my canvas. All the vertical lines are just 1 inch apart. So essentially, I created a fancy grid. So I've been working on this face now for about an hour and a bit, I guess, maybe hour and a half, making corrections to this little guy. And it's not exact, but it's much closer than it was. And I can see victory from here. Now, let me show you. Next project I'm going to tackle with you here is, let's see if I can get, hang on, I'm trying to get my Facebook monitor up and running so I can see those of you. Hello, Thinker888, good to have you here on YouTube. Now, most of you, I presume, are familiar with prospect, with proportional dividers. The problem with, if you will, the problem with this is you have to start the project with these. That's pretty close, but not quite exactly. So, and the other problem with these, as I mentioned the other day, is that they're just a little too loose. And somebody suggested I glue sandpaper. Well, you've got the right idea, believe me. But sandpaper would be about 1,000 times too thick. So yes, maybe just a piece of Scotch tape or something on one of those would make these tight enough. But it's okay. It's not a, you can tell it's made out of plastic. Anything made out of plastic is not a precision tool. Now this next tool is also made out of plastic, so the same goes for this. This is called a proportioner. It says it here somewhere. Yep, way down here. Proportioner, made by Accurate, A-C-U-R-I-T, and distributed by Jerry's out of Arizona. And I'm not going to go through the whole process, but basically you pick, I'm turning a dial down here. And as I turn this dial, the red arrow goes left and right. See that? So first of all, I'm going to use the size of his head as my benchmark, my standard. Okay, so I've got it. There's the size of his head in the photograph. Now on the other side, I want to push in. Anyway, I'm not going to give a full orbed clinic on how to use this. But now the ratios are established, this in the photograph equals this on the painting. So now I can go from the bottom of his chin to the top of his cummerbund, I'll call it, a little baby cummerbund. That means that, hang on just a second, I'm looking for a pencil. Here we go. That means now, bottom of his chin to the top of his cummerbund is right there. And I'm going to go ahead and make some marks with a pencil so as to be in counter-distinction to the paint marks that are already here. Does that make sense? Let's now look at, can we do all the way from elbow to wrist? Elbow to wrist. Is that big? Ooh. So, by the way, one of the things I began to notice about this painting is that the body was too big compared to the head. That's what I'm correcting right now. Let's now go from the top of the cummerbund to the bottom of his shin. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, so this bottom of his leg's supposed to be down there. And this is going to get messy really quickly. Let's do one at an angle. So from the edge of his sleeve to the end of his finger. I wonder how small I can do. Can I do the thickness of his little chubby little arm there? I think I can. I think I can. Just a little engine that could. Okay, as you, this is already getting to be quite the mess, isn't it? Let's do the thickness of his thigh right here, right there. Oops, I did the wrong side, but okay. Thickness of his thigh, right there. Let's do the length of his leg. So obviously, I could drive myself berserk. That's berserk with a New York accent. I could drive myself berserk trying to do every single, and if I had to, I would do every single line, every single measurement. But that would be pretty extreme, and I'm hoping I can get by without doing that. But I'm going to do several more here. Let's do, okay, no, let's do the middle of his collar to where his leg intersects with his arm. Again, forgive me, I'm going so fast here that you really can't keep up with everything I'm saying. I just want you to get the basic idea. And then the length of his leg. Let's just talk for a minute about this, again, this thing that I call cheating. Once again, and almost every time when I talk about cheating, I'll have some new listener. So if you're a new viewer, I'm just trying to be nice and say, save your breath. Don't say, it's not cheating. That's been said 10,000 times already. What is not cheating? What is not cheating is basically anything you can do with a live model and no projecting, tracing, gridding, even measuring. But you can measure with a live model, right? You can use, people use these when they're doing a live model. So that's a very mild cheat. I think people get upset. They get upset that I'm calling this cheating because I want to say, no, it's not cheating. Well, it's my definitions here. It's my channel, my definitions. I call all of this using any quote-unquote artificial means. It's cheating. And again, it's absolutely legal. As an illustrator, I still do illustration sometimes, but I was a full-time illustrator for years and years and years. And I cheated a lot. In fact, that's how I discovered, not just in theory, but in reality, that's how I discovered that one's skill deteriorates when one cheats all the time. Because I experienced it myself. It was not a happy day that it crashed upon me. I've been an illustrator so long, and illustrators pretty much have to cheat. You've got to have a portrait of the president, whoever, the president of the bank, and it's got to be done tomorrow, and it's got to be perfect. As an illustrator, they're not paying you big bucks to get close, right? That's just what it's like to be an illustrator. So in a way, you could say the illustrators are the chief of cheaters. All right, so I'm just mixing up a color that's roughly the same. Doesn't have to be exact, but it's roughly the same as the background, which is, of course, very abstract right now. And the background of this painting is going to be like a leafy garden-ish kind of thing. Oh, you can see that from that photo. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to insult your intelligence there. You can tell what it's going to be. So let's just start doing some real broad brush corrections, and let's see if I can start seeing the correct lines on this little guy. So let me repeat myself. All cheating is legal. Go for it. Norman Rockwell cheated like a crazy banshee. I don't know what a crazy banshee is, but whatever it is, evidently crazy banshees cheat. Throughout history, Jan Van Eyck and all those guys cheated. There's one great exception, by the way, to just if you want to be informed. There is one great master who did not cheat, and that was Rembrandt. And that is part of the reason why I, at least, revere Rembrandt pretty much above every. I don't know if Caravaggio did or not. That is a very good question. But Rembrandt did not cheat, and that really does set him apart quite a bit. But everybody else, all the other, I'm speaking too loosely here. If you want to read the book on the subject, it's David. No, I drew a blank. It'll come back to me in a bit. A book that took the artwork world by storm about 10 or 15 years ago. No, 15 years ago, I guess. That was the thesis of his book. He was sort of blowing the whistle on all of these great masters through history and showing how they cheated. And there was quite the outcry against his thesis. I think people were outraged, dismayed, upset that these people that we elevated to semi-deific levels of existence turned out to have clay feet, and they cheated in all these different ways. And so there was, as I said, there was quite the outcry. So I'm sorry, it'll come back to me in a minute. Maybe one of you guys knows. You can tell me. David, who was it? Who, David? And I still don't have my Facebook monitor up and running yet. Forgive me. It'll be coming in a bit. Okay, let's see if this is it. He's a famous artist in England, this David of whom I speak. I think his last name begins with a G, but I'm speaking out of a sense of smell at the moment, so to speak. Anyway, there was, as I said, a hue and a cry went up from the art world. No, tell us it ain't so. That's not true. And a bunch of people tried to refute his thesis. And when I remember his name, he's quite a famous artist as well. When I do remember his name, I will I'll keep painting while I wait for my Facebook page to behave. Anyway, I was saying that, so this man wrote the book, blowing the whistle, showing everybody that all these great masters cheated. Then a bunch of art professors tried to refute his thesis. I will, if you don't have time to look at it, so I even told you his name because I can't remember all of a sudden. But my impression is that if you truly look at the evidence that he amasses in his book, in my opinion, is truly irrefutable. His proofs are just, that's all. And everybody that was upset with him just didn't do their homework, because he did his homework very well. And as I said, his visual proofs of the fact that all these great masters, when I say all, I mean for all practical purposes, and I'm not being scientific or mathematical here, I'm just using it in the common vernacular. All these masters used cheater methods, cheater techniques to render their masterpieces. And again, his evidence is quite overwhelming. Anyway, so my point being, see, cheating, quote unquote, is legal. And you need to get over the fact that you're sensitive about, whoever you is, all these people that, again, virtually every time I talk about it, say, no, oh, it's not cheating. Why do they say that? Because I'm blowing the whistle on them. I'm calling what they do cheating, and that they don't like that. So like I said, save your breath. I don't know if you're going to hear this or not. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with my laptop. So go ahead and cheat. And as I said, there are times, like I'm cheating right now. I just showed you, right? So don't be offended. This is what I do. I did a huge cheat here. Are you with me? And now I'm cheating. I cheated again using this proportional divider. Okay, let me jump right to the bottom line. So as an artist, what do? Because I don't like the thought of my brain shrinking. I'm speaking analogically, not literally. Don't anybody say, oh, science is showing your brain can't shrink. Okay, good. I'm really being hard on somebody today, aren't I? Using a word picture, using picturesque language, not scientific language. All right, so what do? The answer is quite simple. Avoid cheating until you have to, it basically. In other words, do what I just showed you that I did with these 5 portraits. And again, even doing 5 portraits at one time is almost cheating, because it's a way to alleviate portrait blindness. But it's a cheating that that's not cheating, because you could do 5 live portraits at the same time and have the same effect. Okay? So the answer is use your brain, build up your brainy muscles, build up your powers of observation by trying to draw something just by looking at it. Okay, got it? And then, now if you're just painting just for fun, which is frankly what most of you are doing, right? You're not like me, even though I'm doing these paintings at a really cheap rate. Still, people are paying me real money. I don't mean real good money, but they're paying me money. And so I will not release to the public, so to speak, paintings of which I am ashamed. So, and I also, because I'm making money, I can't just paint forever and ever and ever and ever until I get it right. Right? I'm hoping that is real logical, makes sense to you. I am trying to make a living here. This is not my hobby. This is my life, income life, and so I'm not going to struggle valiantly forward for days, weeks, and months before I get a pretty darn good likeness. I did my work, I did my due diligence, but then at some point I say, okay, to heck with that. I've spent enough time trying to do it the hard way. I've exercised my brain aplenty. Now it's time to cheat. Does that make sense to you? I hope it does. So that is what I recommend to all of you. Is number 1, build your brain muscles, quote unquote. Hello, Thinker, and hello, Barbara. Thinker gives me some critique. It looks to me like the distance from the hairline to the top of the boy's something to the top of the little boy's head. You missed a word there, Thinker. It looks to me like the distance from the hairline to the top of the little boy's head, I'm assuming, is larger on your portrait than on the reference. Well, let's take a look. I can still see my pencil lines here. And the answer is nope. Here's my cheater guides. See those lines right there? I can still see them. There it is there. And there it is there. And it's exactly right on. Now, I don't mind you. You're more than welcome. Hello, Barbara. More than welcome to I'm working on my Facebook again. I think part of the problem is I don't really understand how to use Facebook as a user. I know how to use Facebook as a business person who posts, but I'm not very good at come on. Give me take a minute again and for some reason it's slow as molasses, which is really aggravating. All right, that's enough irritating you. I'm going to double check now the length of the baby's arm again, from where the sleeve intersects with his arm, where his arm comes out of his sleeve, so to speak, to the end of his index finger is that long. Yeah, that's about correct. Okay. Continue to paint then. So, again, in summary, my recommendation is try to do things the hard way, the old-fashioned way, for a while, up to a point. Now, if it's just a hobby, then you can keep doing that forever till you get it right. But because I'm trying to make a living, I have to do things with a certain degree of dispatch. So I don't have the luxury of fiddling forever and ever and ever and ever. I have to move on. So that's what you're seeing. I hope that's a good tip for somebody out there. I'm going to do just a little bit more drawing on this guy, with paint and small brushes. And then it's time for me to put them away. Why? Because I'm growing blind to my mistakes. That is maybe, I don't think I've ever heard anybody else teach this. I'm sure somebody must be teaching it somewhere. But it's perhaps to some degree my little contribution to the world of portrait painting. I'm not going to give advice to professionals or freaks of nature genius. I'm giving advice to us mere mortals who are struggling to try to break into the magical, mystery, wonderful world of producing perfect likenesses. My feeling is that you have to be able to produce, in the world of portrait, you have to be able to produce a quote-unquote, at least, perfect likeness. Oh, I know what I need to check. Hang on. I need to check. So here again, cheating. Got it? I need to check the distance from, let's say, his left pupil to the top of his pudgy forehead. So let's see how I'm doing here. Left pupil to the top of, wait a minute, something's way off. Okay, let's do from top of his ear to the bottom of his sleeve. I think I just uncovered a huge mistake here. Top of his ear to the bottom of his sleeve. Oh my goodness, somehow I missed this. I didn't measure this one, and just in the process of making a huge mistake. His sleeve is all the way up to here. Now let's check on them from the bottom of his sleeve to the little point fold in his shirt sleeve there. Is that much? Okay, I'm pretty close there. So that's not bad. Wait, did I do the right line? No, I did not. Okay. By the way, okay, since I'm doing all this talking about quote-unquote cheating, one of the things that people do say to me when I do this, forgive me, when I do this, my rant about cheating, one of the things that people like to point out, and they're absolutely correct in this, is that even with cheating, it ain't so easy. It's still very difficult to capture perfect likeness, and that is, people like to point that out, and that I absolutely agree with them. And if you hear that squeak, if any of you have ever done a grid, that's again perfectly appropriate form of cheating. If you've done a grid, then you know very well that a grid is far from a panacea, because there's still so much room to screw up in a grid. And again, if any of you are artists and you tried it, that's part of the reason, part of what some people mean when they say it's not cheating. Part of what they're trying to say is, well, even after you do cheat, it's still plenty hard to get a perfect likeness. And that is absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And that's even there. Perhaps somebody who has not tried to do a portrait might be mistaken. Say, well, if you cheat, man, you get everything just perfect. The answer is, oh yeah. That used to be one of my smart aleck answers back when I was an illustrator, in the days when I had to cheat like crazy, like using a projector, tracing, using a grid, anything like that. I could rather smugly, if anybody said, oh, so you cheated, eh? Then I could rather smugly hand a pencil to whoever said that and say, okay, here, you try it. And all of us who are artists go, yeah, that's right. Because even after you've cheated like crazy, it's still, like this face, for instance, is not perfect. And I showed you I did quite a technical cheat on this. But it doesn't look exactly like this little boy. So I'm looking for a clean copy of his face. Oh, not finding it. Maybe it's because it fell down here. Yeah. So for some reason, I'm close, and measurement-wise, so there's a good example of, okay, if you think it's easy, if you cheat, it's easy. Wrong-o, Smedley, because I just cheated like crazy, and I'm still not perfect. So I'm not going to worry about that, because I have portrait blindness. I've been working on this guy too recently, and so I can't see my mistakes. So what I'm going to do is put this little guy away here in a few minutes and go work on a bunch of other portraits. And then when I come back to this guy, I'll be seeing him through fresh eyes. Does that make sense? Again, that's a principle I hope that you will find helpful, beneficial. It really is easier to do several portraits at the same time instead of one at a time. And that's part of the reason why I'm offering. And by the way, if you missed my offer, it still opens. I got 3 new portraits in the last day or two. So I'm offering to do a portrait of you or your loved one for a ridiculous $300. That's ridiculously low. But part of the trick is, so That's per person, by the way, right? I've been rather dismayed at how many people thought I would do a family of 2, 3, or 4 for $350. Like, what are you talking about? And again, I've talked the other day about, I think so many people, they think that a full-time artist is kind of like being Bob Ross. And you just, they don't realize, as you would, if you watch me do these 5 portraits, you go, dang, I never had any idea. If you're not an artist, you're saying, I had no idea the artist had to work so hard. Well, good, glad to be part of your expanding world. All right, at least now his body looks proportional to his head, so that's a great relief. And it's time for me to put this little guy away. I may not even come back to him, well, probably this evening sometime, but it needs to dry. I want it to dry quite a bit. And okay, since the subject of this broadcast was about cheating, let's go ahead and do this other real major cheat. See, I don't need to cheat on the dog. I don't need to cheat on Kim Coley and one of the babies. It turns out I only need to cheat on 2 of my 5 portraits. So that's a pretty good ratio. The fact that one of them is a dog is kind of bends the curve a little bit. And I think that hello, Barbara. Thank you for your nice chat comment. I appreciate that. Barbara, ladies and gentlemen on YouTube, Barbara is a very competent professional artist, and her critique etiquette is probably something to emulate. You're more than welcome to make suggestions. I would recommend keeping them humble, which most of you do. In fact, as we discovered just a little while ago with the size of that boy's hair, here's something you need to understand as an artist yourself, that when you're doing a portrait and you're really striving for perfection, a likeness, perfect likeness, most of the time, what you think is the problem is actually not the problem. Something else is the problem. And but your brain is interpreting it. And you learn that very quickly if you struggle to do portraiture. Because you'll think, oh, this is, here's what's wrong. I can see what's wrong. And again, turns out you're wrong. Once again, I'm trying to get my my Facebook monitor up and running. Let's see if it comes up now. Something else has come up. Okay, I'm stuck. Yeah, you guys. So let's get to work here on this little. This is small. This is more typical of my wedding portraits, isn't it? Because it's a full figure painting, and the canvas is 16 by 20, then the face is fairly small. First of all, here's a little tool that I stumbled on the other day. It's a blending stub, normally used for pencil and charcoal for blending. But I discovered that if you stick it in, the brush cleaner, Gamsol in this case, so now it's paper saturated with Gamsol, that I can actually manage to erase little bits, which is a wonderful discovery. All right, now, I already discovered a little while ago that I have her nose, I had it too low, so let's correct that. Some of you, if there's anybody here who follows me on a normal basis, you know that one of my most common mantras in painting is you get dark with transparent colors and light with opaque. The name of the book that I've been working on for years is called The Breakable Laws of Painting. Every law can be broken. There are many teachers out there who, in my opinion, either they're pompous or they're not linguists. They're not philologically gifted. There are some teachers who say, there's no such thing as rules in art. You show me a rule and I'll show you a painting that breaks it. And as I say all the time, well, there's two kinds of people that say that. One is lousy painters. They say there's no rules because they don't know there are any. That's why their paintings are lousy. And many professors fall into that category. Not all, but many. And but most of the time, people who say that, it's simply because they're not overly given to what verbal, I don't want to use the word sophistication, but verbal see, I'm not given to it either, evidently. They're not given to careful wording. Anyway, there are rules of painting. And again, somebody might say, well, you tell me a rule and I'll show you a painting that breaks the rule. Well, of course. So that's why the name of my thesis is The Breakable Laws of Painting, because every law can be broken. Well, I want to tell you about one right here. Bottom width, which is about 1/16 of an inch. And the rule is get darks. If you want some part of your painting to be dark, you accomplish that by the application of transparent paint. Conversely, if you want some part of your painting to be lighter, you accomplish that by the application of opaque paint. I'm not going to go any more than that, just that. But here is an exception to that rule. And the exception is really quite simple and broad. That rule doesn't really apply to portraiture, and especially to small portraits like this, because if you try to follow that rule when you're doing portraiture, that is, get dark with transparency, you'll find yourself overshooting the mark. It's like that rule is too blunt. Let me measure the bottom of this. It's too blunt of a tool. I'm sorry, I used that word too many times in the sentence. So can you see what I'm doing here? You can see how the lines that I put on the photograph in Photoshop are helping me get things placed exactly. Now, before I rest on this mouth, let's check the other way. Let's make sure I've actually got it the right width. This. Ooh, no, it needs to go that way a little bit. And over here. It's okay there, but I need a little bit, just a little tiny bit magnitude in the left corner. And you know what's funny? After I measure that and see my mistake, very often, after I find my mistake in the technical realm, then I can see it visually. It's like, oh yeah, I missed the corner of that mouth goes over too far. So I am not going to broadcast here this whole process because it would just get too boring. I've accomplished, I hope, what I set out to accomplish with this broadcast, which is showing you how I transition from no cheating to yes cheating. And again, principle being, do your best to draw, to render the subject without any artificial means of support. First, do your best, because then your brain is growing and your skills are increasing. And after having given it, so to speak, the old college try, then switch to whatever cheat may be necessary. And I have a lot more. This is the first time I've ever done this exact thing, by the way. In other words, there's 1,000 different ways to cheat. You can always be making up new ones. But I'm not going to try to show all of them to you today. I think I'll let that suffice. And I'm sorry I never did get a monitor happening on my Facebook. Let's do another check. The side of her temple, a little bit iffy. I look at it in my paint. I'm not sure that's right. Oh yeah, I've got her glasses in my painting. I've got her glasses on right there, going out too far. Need to bring it in about a 1/16 of an inch. The rim of her glasses comes into about here. Now, and again, the question is, now that I know that mentally, can I look at it? Can I look at the photograph and recognize that I made that mistake? Almost always the answer is, oh yeah, once I know about it, once I know about my mistake, I can sure enough see it. But it helps to see it. It helps not just, don't just blindly follow what what your measurements tell you. Take advantage of the moment of discovery and make sure your brain can perceive said mistake. Right, now, I'll do one more thing before I go, and then, because again, I think this is just too tedious. It's just be too boring for you guys. I think I looked briefly the other day, I looked at the position of her left eye, our right, because I think I'm not correct. And that is correct. I am not correct. And this eye needs to come in, and probably 32nd of an inch on one side, 1/16 of an inch in on the other. Now you could probably tell that I'm not worrying too much about color at this point in the painting. I've got my hands full, so this may be instructive for some of you. I have my hands full just trying to get a perfect, everything in the right place. Once all the measurements are correct, then it will be, for me, quite an easy matter to correct the coloring. There's little hints of coloring in her this underpainting. I would call everything under now would call underpainting. But I'm not worrying very much about color. Because I have my hands full Just trying to get the features in the right place. The smaller a portrait is, by the way, the more difficult it is. Because the tolerances, as you heard me say a minute ago, 32nd of an inch. And that's a pretty small measurement, but it was enough to make a likeness elusive. It's just certainly enough to make it so when I glance at her, I don't instantly, my brain doesn't go, oh, Jessica. Now, I don't know Jessica, by the way, so that I'm at a slight disadvantage. It really does help. This is one of the reasons why doing portraits from life. By the way, I haven't said anything about that. Now, all portraits done from photographs are sort of inherently inferior to portraits done from life. Did I say that right? All portraits done from photographs. I'm not sure that's what I said. That's what I meant to say. All portraits done from photographs are. Plus, we don't get the snob factor, right? If you do a portrait from life, you get to hold your head at a jaunty, arrogant disposition. I hope I'm being facetious. All right, and now without cheating, I can see that the top left side of her lip is too high. Ah, whoops, that's a mild disaster. Well, I'll stop right there. I need to fix that. I'll end that because I hope I've been instructive enough, and I hope that somebody out there can benefit from some of this talk. Try to do it with no cheating. Then after a while, you can and actually I go back and forth, as you just saw right then. I discerned just with my naked eye that, you know, the top of one side of her lip was a little bit too high. The same thing will happen with, again, with this little guy. I cheated a lot to get his face, but he's not perfect. So the next step for him will be, after I've washed that image out of my brain, then I can come back to it with fresh eyes, and I'll be able to see my mistakes much more better. In the meantime, I've got to finish Kim and finish the dog, and that'll be fun. Thanks for watching. I hope to be back and have another broadcast later on today, but we'll see. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.